This episode of Maverick in the Machine is brought to you by Jones Plantation Film. If you haven't seen the indie, soon-to-be cult classic Jones Plantation film yet, go watch that film. It's available now at jonesplantationfilm.com. That's jonesplantationfilm.com and on most major streaming platforms.
Jones!
Also, my new film, Barnum World, is out now. And per the Indiegogo campaign we did, it's available everywhere for free. So you can find that at my YouTube channel at Drew Media TV, my Rumble channel. All my channels are basically Drew Media, and there'll be more platforms coming soon. Now, let's start this episode of Maverick in the Machine.
Insanity is what I call society. Don't tell me what to do, don't tell me how to be. I don't trust the government, I know they lie to me. They can like my body, yo, for my soul and mind to breathe.
All right. What's up, everyone? I've got another Maverick in the building today, an intellectual Maverick, we'll call him. Domenic Scarcella. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Drew. Good to be here. Good to finally meet you sort of virtually here after reading some of your stuff and watching some of your stuff.
Likewise. I've been. I actually discovered you on History Homos.
Ah, there you go. Very good.
Yeah, and I was just like so many. I was just I got an ESV Bible, and I was going to go back and I was trying to start to read the Bible again. And then I listened to one of the shows, and I was like, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He should do a course. And then it just hit me like, I'll bring him on and we'll talk about these things. Then you've got your book. We'll get into all that. Before we get started, though, can you tell the audience, maybe people that aren't familiar with the work, a little about something about yourself, what you do, yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada, yada. Well, I've had a lot of careers over the past few decades. I worked in publishing, news media, worked in broadcast engineering and operations, worked in software briefly, did contract work, was an indie musician for a while. I've been a pro wrestling commentator for an indie promotion. So I've done quite a lot of things. I'm not an extrovert, but I learned how to get over my stage fright and interact with people. And you mentioned that I do some writing and podcasting, mostly on Substack, but I've also written a very short book. So yeah, I've been exercising my old writing skills again the last few years. Something to keep busy, something that I think is valuable, and I've been very blessed that other people have gotten some use out of it as well.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you, and then I'll obviously have the links for the delight of the audience in the show notes, and then we'll do it again at the end of the show.
Search for Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen on Substack. The podcast is home based there. It's called The Sunday Buffet. You can also get that on Spotify. I've heard some people do RSS feeds or podcatchers, but if you're looking for Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen on Substack, that's the home base. If you find me on other platforms, Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen, look for my name and perhaps a link to the Substack. My book is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and LuLu, all the on-demand publishing that you can order online.
Yeah, Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen. I love this concept, and I've gone through your book, and we're going to get into all that because it's a really cool concept, and it's something that aligns with stuff I've been screaming from the top of the buildings lately. But before we get going, this is Maverick in the Machine. The show's originally it's kind of built around people who have succeeded in what I call evil clown world, whatever you want to call it, but still have maintained their integrity through it all. So they've done them and not, if you say, sold out, if you will. And I was trying originally to find like some sort of a through line to see if there's something that made us all similar, okay? And I haven't yet. Now, I don't have a sample size to really make a final determination on that, but I have interviewed a lot of people, and I'm starting to think that there really might just be a genetic thing or a spiritual thing. I don't know. But still, it's interesting to hear people's backgrounds and their stories. So let's go back. Where are you from? What was your childhood like? Where were you born and raised?
I'm from the New York City metropolitan area, mostly on the New York side of things. That's where I grew up. I went to college in northeastern Pennsylvania, lived out there very briefly, getting into the newspaper business. Lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut for a while, and then made my way down to southern New Jersey, where to get back into daily news, which is somewhere in the Philadelphia region. If you look at a map, half of Jersey is Philadelphia, half of Jersey is New York City. So I'm in the Philadelphia half,
Okay.
bottom part of the state, and I accidentally settled. But when I got here, I didn't know I would be here as long as I've been here. But no one's thrown me out. So,
So are you from one of the 5 boroughs? Grew up in an Italian family?
Italian, yes, Italian extended family. You got it. Yeah, born in the Bronx, lived right above the Bronx for a while, within an hour or so of New York City.
What's that place called? Money making. What's the place up north of New York? Did you go? I think I know a lot of people from up there. I know I've got a lot of people in that area. That's why I'm digging into the details.
Westchester County.
Mount Vernon?
Not in Mount
Money
Vernon.
earned in Mount
no.
Vernon, that's what they call it. What is it? Are you from there? No?
No, I'm not from Mount Vernon, but yeah, Mount Vernon
Okay.
is around. It's towns that a lot of people haven't heard of. Like I lived in Mount Pleasant. I lived in Somers.
Okay.
So
What was childhood like? Good family, or was there things rocky? Or was it just a good, loving Italian family? Was there anything there that made you like this today? Is what I'm saying. Is there anything you can think to grab onto?
I don't know. I think I was always very analytical. To get where I am now, I had to undo a lot of things that come naturally to me.
Okay.
I'm naturally, for instance, a very orderly person. If you took a personality test, I'd be high conscientiousness.
Okay.
The orderly part of me, but that can corrupt into being a control freak, and so I had to get rid of that. I had to get rid of a lot of that. I had to get rid of some neuroticism, or maybe get rid of isn't the right word. It's build up the other tools that make it different. So the way I grew up, I mean, it was fine, but what made me what I am today is working against a lot of my tendencies.
Well, I mean, what tools do you use? You meditate, or how did you do that?
I do meditative prayer. I've done a lot of that. I tend to be a reflective person. I am very analytical. I'm a tinkerer with things. So I'm not as inventive as I am adaptive with my creativity. I'm not the kind of guy that would come up with a ton of great ideas, brand new ideas for brand spanking new stuff. But I can tinker with stuff that's already here and say, it's not working here. It could be improved here. Something's failing there. Maybe it can be repurposed for this other thing that's very similar. Analogies, metaphor, those things. So I have a natural ability for that kind of thinking. And I've had to hone it over the years to make it do the right thing, Because just having raw ability doesn't, everybody in the NBA has raw ability, but there's a lot of people who have raw ability who never make it to the NBA.
Yeah, you go to New York City, you go to those courts. I used to live down the street from them. I lived in New York for a year, and
Wow.
you go. Those guys are. I mean, some of those basketball players are just incredible on those courts.
Oh,
They're
yeah, the pickup
just
games
don't have
on the street. Yeah.
Well, no, there's actual courts. Yeah, it's kind of a famous place. There's like a lot of like street legend ball players down there and stuff like that. But I used to go watch them. I don't even like basketball, but live kind of thing, and it was like intense. And some of those guys, I mean, they're just so good, but they just whatever their background was, the way they were raised, whether they got involved in drugs or drinking, whatever it was, they just didn't have the tools to make it to that level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You can't refine yourself. You can't interact with other people on a team, in a system, because being liberty-minded and freedom-minded and being an anarchist, because I know what the word means. It doesn't mean you're making bombs and throwing them at people. A lot of times, people like me get said, "Oh, so you're just the loner? You're just all by yourself all the time?" It's like, no, I'm social like most everybody else. So I know how to engage with other people. I know how to work with other people. I know how to do a few things really well and pass it off to the next person who does something else really well. So I'm not a lone wolf. I'm not somebody who's all by myself all the time. I like to get out and do things, even though I'm not a really a center of attention kind of guy. So I understand that there's social interaction is really a skill like any other. You got to practice it to do it well. Little kids, when they're thrown together, maybe they're playing all right, but sometimes they just start fighting over the dumbest things and reaching for toys, and everything's emotional outbursts. So even things like social interaction and being able to be productive in society, these are skills I've had to hone. So I have my natural gifts and I have my natural weaknesses, and I think getting to the point where I am as an adult was a long journey and a process, but I think you have to do that.
So what is a good neighbor, bad citizen?
Okay, so good neighbors are the people who can engage with their fellow humans as peers without trying to get them to do stuff because I'm going to threaten you, I'm going to coerce you into doing it, I'm going to harm you, I'm going to steal from you, I'm going to assault you. It's also the kind of person who's not so desperate to be told what to do. If you're not going to put forth the effort to be a mature individual and engage with people, and you just want somebody to tell you what you do, you have maybe the slave mentality. And I know you're familiar with that from some of your work. Having a slave mentality is a problem. That also takes you away from being a good neighbor. And the good citizen is the person who's constantly seeking the external validation of the systems around them. So they're letting their priorities be dictated to them, rather than doing the hard work of grappling and discovery and really insourcing, getting to the point where they can insource their ethics. Because that's what virtue is. Virtues are good habits that you've insourced in yourself. Like obedience is not really a virtue. It's an anti-virtue. It's a fake virtue. If you're externaling your ethics, then it's not virtue by definition.
It's also an easy virtue. That's why so many people do it.
Yeah, insourcing ethics is hard work. Yes, as humans, we're constantly looking for things that save time and effort and energy, because all these things, I get into economics discussions with people who tell me, why do you have a scarcity mindset? I say, well, I don't have a scarcity mindset, but why do you think that scarcity is not real? There are limits on everything we use. There are limits on our own time. There are limits on our own energy. We can only be in one place at a time. Like right now, I'm speaking to you via a remote connection. We're having a pretty cool conversation. This means I can't be doing something else. So scarcity is real. So as humans, we're constantly looking for ways to not waste time, energy, resources. So yeah, we're always looking for shortcuts. And yes, it's very, very attractive to have somebody else make your decisions for you because it saves you time and effort. But I don't think that's a good way to be as a mature person.
You mentioned you're Are you an anarchist?
I call myself an anarchist. I don't look to government to solve any of my problems. I get annoyed when people in government try to.
And you are a biblical expert, would you say, or a biblical scholar? I don't want to.
I am not a scholar in any formal sense. My formal education goes no farther than a 4-year college.
Who cares about that? What about your knowledge? Your knowledge is what I'm interested in.
My knowledge, I come to my knowledge, I was a learn-on-the-job guy at all my different jobs that we talked about. So I've been a person who has delved into history, and I understand these things. And so my knowledge of the Bible comes from being a practicing Christian and being someone who's familiar enough with it and who doesn't read it at the surface level. I like to go deeper into things than just the surface level.
So you would consider yourself a biblical expert, correct? I mean, you would consider yourself...
I would not say... I wrote an article for Substack where I say I don't believe that experts exist. Like, expertise might exist if it's demonstrated, but I don't think that a person is an expert.
All right, let's take it out. You know your shit.
I could. I'll have to prove it to you, though. We'll see when you start asking me questions. I'll have to prove it. Like, I can't just tell you I have this credential. I'm not an expert. Well, I can't say, I have this credential, so I'm an expert. Like, you're going to ask me some questions, and your viewers will have to decide whether or not I'm given answers that make logical sense, whether if I make a claim of evidence, I can at least direct people towards it. So, I'm going to have to prove it. You got to prove it in the moment. It's one of the problems with the COVID hoax. Everybody was an expert, and nobody doggone proved anything that they were talking about. The people on the government side.
We're not going to get caught up in credentialing here, but I get your point. So
yeah.
Here's my thought. So I've been saying that if we're ever going to have any real freedom in this world that we're living in, I consider it to be a modern day slave plantation. It's an electronic slave plantation at this point. Slavery never ended. Now we're all slaves. Have you seen Jones Plantation?
I've seen parts of it, and I've heard Larkin Rose's interviews about it, but I haven't seen the full movie.
Okay.
No, I see the poster behind you though on your screen.
Yeah, that's one of them. There's two. Yeah, that's the primary poster. Then there's another one that's more like an art piece. But anyways, so bottom up, like Corbett always talks about, bottom up management of society. There's no way that's going to happen without a massive upgrade of consciousness. And you mentioned earlier, people acting like children, they want to be told what to do. That's pretty much the problem, that most people are operating at like a level of a 12-year-old when it comes to these things. And so there's absolutely, and I'm not confident that we can have a bottom-up society or that we're supposed to. But if it's ever going to happen, it would have to be an upgrade in consciousness is my thought on it. And what I like about your book, and like I do most books, I just go through it. I'm a archetype systems man. I'm very good at that. I'm not a details, don't bore me with the details kind of guy. But when I do dive into the details, I get obsessed with it, okay? I'm going to read every word of this book. You just sent it to me like a week ago. I'm going to read. I went through it. I love it. I love your prose. I'm going to read every word of it. And I think I'm going to get, in fact, I know I'm going to get the hard copy and give it to my daughter. I don't force her to do things. There's one thing I'm going to force her to do, and that's to do jujitsu, but that's it. But anything else is, I'm going to really say, hey, when you're ready, read this. Because I think this book and the concept of a good neighbor, bad citizen is exactly what I'm talking about. It seems to be. What are your thoughts on that, first of all, before we go to the next? Because I've got something I want to do here. But what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I can give you a little more examination of it from the introduction to the book. By the way, the book is, I'll hold it up there on the screen. It's not a very large book. It's kind of thing you could put in your pocket.
It's like 66 pages,
extremely thin.
Yeah, it's a quick read.
It's under 10,000 words for the body. So for the average adult who reads 230-ish words a minute, this is a 45-minute read. I didn't write it to be the kind of thing that it would be a chore. My Substack articles are under 1,000 words for the body. It's a 5-minute read. My podcasts are 30 minutes. I'm not trying to take up everybody's all day. But
your prose is also, I would describe as delightful. Like it's a very happy, light, delightful kind of bouncy prose.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I tried to do more than just get the ideas down, but put them in a way that people would want to read about it.
Yeah.
And
it feels kind and fun. Your prose feels kind and fun. That's the way I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's quite a compliment. I've never heard anyone put it that way, but I'll take it.
I mean it,
Well, let me give you a sample, and your viewers and listeners can decide the pros for themselves. So I go through here in the introduction. Good neighbors treat each other as peers. Good citizens treat each other according to official status. Good neighbors seek the personal, intimate betterment of themselves and each other. Good citizens seek the external validation of an impersonal system. Good neighbors align to voluntary, open-ended interactions. Good citizens align to coercive civil authority and imposed hierarchical social order. Good neighbors insource their ethics. Charity and friendship are the key virtues of their relationships. Good citizens outsource their ethics. Compliance with the commands of rulers and enforcers is a fundamental and necessary aspect. Some might call it a civic virtue. Good neighbors consent. Good citizens conform.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
And in the back of the book, what you do is you have 5 questions that kind of relate to each 5 chapters of the book.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you these questions and see if you would elaborate on them.
Okay.
Would that be all right?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the very end of the book.
Very end of the book, you have five. It says have 5 questions that relate to for the reader that relate to the book and the chapters corresponding.
Yeah, the 5 chapters of the book. It goes through. It discusses the key principles that Jesus tries to teach by using the backdrop of his way of the cross, like his persecution at the end. But there are callbacks to things earlier in his public ministry. So it's not just focusing on only what happens during his persecution, but it's what led up to his persecution. And the 5 chapters, just so people can follow along, I break the way of his cross into 5 very brief chapters that talk about his sentencing, the sharing that goes on with the people he meets along that parade route, because that's what the Romans did to you when they were crucifying you. They paraded you first as a way of scaring everybody else. Some of the courage involved, ultimately the hatred involved towards him, and then also the mercy. So those become the 5 very small chapters. Sentencing, sharing, courage, hatred, and finally mercy. And yes, at the end I do a conclusion where I give people some questions to ponder, because I think questions are a good way to internalize things. Just receiving answers is not the best way to really internalize and in-source what you're discussing and learning. But having a question that you have to answer, I think, helps. And so I go through some questions and I give some answers, but then, like you were saying, I finish the conclusion by just giving 5 questions that I don't answer in the book. So are those the 5 you wanted to go through now?
Yeah, is that okay? I don't want to give the book
Yes.
away. Is that okay?
Oh
Okay.
yes, I say this to every time I do an interview. It's not like I do interviews all day, but I always tell people, like, whatever your show is and your format is, I'm the guest. Bring it on. I'll do my best.
Greatness. This is a quick weird story that I just remembered when you were talking about Christ in the parade.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I went to Mardi Gras in New Orleans, which is coming up in a couple weeks.
Sure.
And there was a guy. So it's crowded. We're in the streets. It wasn't Canal Street, but it was it was packed. I don't know if you've ever been to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's mayhem.
No.
Okay, so, and this guy has a full wooden cross, and he's walking through the crowd. And I should have looked. I just came to me, so I haven't looked this up. But I assume that Mardi Gras has something to do with Christ. I don't even know.
Mardi Gras is the day before Ash Wednesday, which is the beginning of Lent. Mardi Gras, translated from the French, is Fat Tuesday. Yeah. And it harkens back to the old European tradition that when a lot of people had dietary restrictions during the Lenten season, which is the 6 or 7 weeks leading up to Holy Week and what we call Easter, they would not eat, for instance, eggs. So the whole tradition of making pancakes on the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday was you had to get rid of your eggs. So yeah, it was kind of Fat Tuesday, where you would eat all this other stuff because you were entering a 40-day period where you would do periodic fasting every now and then. You would restrict the things that you were going to consume. Yes, so that Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, absolutely. It starts Christian, but I mean it's become secularized.
Oh, it was.
So
it
the
was
guy you're talking
Christian about my experience
least,
there,
right?
Yeah, he was holding it down. But my point was, he was walking with the cross, and everybody, not me, but everybody. There was a lot of people spitting on him, throwing beer cans at him, telling him to go fuck himself, all this crazy shit. And I remember, I mean, there was like visceral anger at the guy, and I remember he looked right at me for some reason. I'll never forget. And then I looked at him, and he like looked through me. It was a really weird moment we had where he was like just, this is horrible. And I don't know. It's burned in my brain for the rest of my life. But you made me think of that. I don't know.
That's
just a
very
story.
authentic. I mean, people hate Jesus when most people hate Jesus.
Yeah,
by the time
I felt like
he's
is this what
persecuted.
happened to him? Yeah. It was weird. It was interesting. Yeah, it was like people were really being nasty to him, and he just was going on. And he had it was a giant, looked like oak cross. Like it was a legit cross. Like he was sweating and working. You know, it was wild. Anyways, let's get to these questions. Okay, so chapter 1. This is, you said, these questions that recalling each of the 5 chapters. 1, will you accept the limitations of the human condition without sentencing anyone to victimhood and extra suffering, nor wanting another person or group to inflict such evil. What do you mean?
What do I mean by that?
Yeah, what do you say?
Okay,
what say you, my friend?
Let's say, well, we're all limited, and we're not limited in exactly the same way. So being a good neighbor requires you to understand that not everybody is going to like the same things that you like, see the world the way you see the world, prefer the things that you prefer, be good at the things that you are good at, pursue the things you pursue. And what's your response to that? If your response is, well, I have to make this person more like me, and I'm going to do that by forcing them, manipulating them, committing violence against them, that's what I would call a really bad response. That would be a non-Christ-like response, a non-Christian response, a non-virtuous response, a non-neighborly response. But then the little thing I put in there at the end, nor wanting another person or group to inflict such evil. So, okay, maybe you're a coward. Not you personally. Maybe you're a coward. Maybe you don't have the guts to do the things to other people that you deep down want to do to them. But you're perfectly willing to have somebody else do it on your behalf. You want some sort of government to carry out the evil that you don't have the guts to do yourself, or you don't have the ability to do yourself. So it's not only getting, because there's a lot of people who, the good citizen mantra is, well, I don't steal from anybody. I don't put people in cages. I just cheer for other people to do it on my behalf. I just cheer for other people to tax those other rich people, or those other people who are doing, I want the sin taxes. I want people to tax those other people who are doing things that I don't like. Or that product comes from the other side of this imaginary line drawn by sociopaths called a border. So I want somebody to steal from the people because they moved that product across this imaginary line. So I don't steal from people, but I cheer for other people to do it on my behalf against the targets that I want to be targeted. So it starts with the you. What are your attitudes toward people? And then it becomes, but do you support other people doing it on your behalf? And if you're just outsourcing your evil, then you're still evil.
Which one is worse?
You still have evil intentions. You know,
which one is worse, do you think? Is outsourcing or doing it? Which one?
It could be either. Like, if you steal from somebody, you're doing it. But if you want somebody else to steal on your behalf, okay, you still have the evil intent. That's how government survives, is people who are willing to outsource really the worst parts of themselves because they think it'll bring them order and security. So it's not enough to say, I don't steal from people if you're supporting other people doing it on your behalf. That's where the anarchism comes in. It's like, I don't support those imposed hierarchical social orders. I don't support monopoly violence institutions. I don't cheer for that. I don't call the cops on my neighbors. I don't want other people to be taxed so that I can get stuff. And that becomes a harder question to ask, because most of us are brought up, you talked about, your upbringing. Most of us are brought up to be polite and to not cause trouble. But then a lot of us are also brought up in this situation with democracy where we're supposed to cheer for other people to be rather impolite and intrusive on our behalf. And we're supposed to cheer for our team. So I'm hoping people will think about the question on two levels, the personal and the societal.
What did you mean by, just to drill down a little bit, without sentencing anyone to victimhood and extra suffering? What do you mean by that?
Making victims out of people or suffering. In the beginning of chapter 1, I talked about what suffering is.
Okay.
To suffer is to hit a limit. That's what it means. I've hit my limit. We often talk about it in respect to physical pain. I've hit my threshold of pain. Like, that's uncomfortable to me now. That's painful to me. But you can suffer mentally. You can suffer psychologically. You can hit a limit psychologically where things don't make sense to you and it really gets to you. You can suffer mentally where, you're trying to figure out something and you've just hit your limit of analytical ability or experience you have in the problem. So to suffer is to hit a limit. So to not sentence someone to extra suffering is not to take advantage of someone else's limits. Like, the reason why coercion works is because you're threatening to attack someone's limits. You're threatening to inflict bodily harm. You're threatening to steal from them. You're threatening to restrict their free and nonviolent movement. So you're threatening to inflict extra suffering on a person. You're threatening to make someone a victim of you. And victimhood could have a second meaning as well, where there's kind of the noble victim, where
We're swimming in that today, aren't we?
right, the noble victimhood. Like, people almost want to be victims because it means that you can blame someone else. The problem with victim mentality is now you have to go searching for a perpetrator, and you may be accusing somebody of doing something that really doesn't deserve that label or doesn't deserve that criticism. So yes, don't make victims out of people. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everybody or go along with everything that everybody says, because again, we are different as people. But you shouldn't want to inflict extra suffering on people as a way of getting even with them, getting them to do what you want, and you shouldn't scale that up to the societal level and want institutions in your community to do that on your behalf.
All right, question two.
To be human is to suffer. We're limited beings, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to hit those limits. So we suffer because that's what it means to have limits. The question isn't whether you suffer. The question is whether you take advantage of other people's limits to manipulate them, to violate them. It's the difference between tragedy and evil. Okay, life is tragic because we're limited, and things go wrong. But that doesn't mean that life has to be full of evil. Other people don't have to make it worse. We don't have to make it worse for ourselves or for others. Suffer without doing evil.
All right. You ready for two?
Sure.
All right. Will you set aside primitive, closed-minded ethics and instead share in the good chaos of growth? This is an interesting one. Explain that. The good chaos of growth.
I went after psychology in the preface to chapter 2. For most of our development, people use the crude ethics of order equals good and disorder or chaos equals evil. The known is good, the unknown is evil. This is where all the isms come from: racism, tribalism. This is what I know, and so that's good. My team. The stuff I don't know is to be feared. It's scary.
Okay.
Controllable is good. Uncontrollable is evil. So that's the primitive human ethics. And you see that in traditional religions everywhere. Like the gods that people create, when they take the aspects of their own experience, their own humanity, the natural world, and they anthropomorphize them, they personify them, they make persons out of them with willpowers. It's always towards, well, the good is order. The good gods are the ones who bring order and controllability. And the forces of evil are the ones that bring disorder. And I challenge that mentality because everything you care about in your life is the result of people encountering and embracing chaos. Everything. The fact that you know more people than just your sort of closest relatives in those Dunbar number 150 person tribes. The fact that you don't live in a cave anymore. Everything we love about our lives, including the people in them, unless we only hang out with our 150 closest biological relatives, comes from people deciding that no, the unknown is not automatically evil. the uncontrollable is not automatically evil. The disordered right now that we just don't understand, we can't impose an order on it, is not automatically evil. The way I phrase it here is when Jesus stumbles under the weight of the cross, a little bit of chaos crashes the strict orderly proceedings. Good chaos. Too often the human psyche reverts to primitive closed-minded ethics. Order, the known or controlled, is good, and chaos, the unknown or uncontrolled, is evil. But Jesus often causes chaos for human order during his public ministry, presenting a fascinating complement, meaning complete, not compliment like I tell you you're something about you is good. A fascinating complement to the Genesis accounts of God making order from chaos. Yes, chaos can be good and order can be evil, as the Roman regime demonstrates quite clearly. So I'm challenging the primitive ethics that are built on the most basic human psyche, because it's all around you that chaos is not evil and order is not good. If you pay attention, there is plenty of evil order in the world, and there is plenty of good in things that you don't know and can't control. But you have to get over the deep, primitive stuff that we have in our psyches. It takes work. You know, you brought up earlier easy versus difficult. Like the good neighbor stuff seems easy. The good citizen stuff, doing what you're told, seems easy. Whereas making the effort and being a good neighbor looks difficult. Yeah. It's so easy to revert to the primitive human psyche's notion of what's good and evil. And Jesus challenges that, and I invite people to explore that challenge.
Okay.
The Gospels definitely challenge that.
It's interesting because I love chaos. That's one of the reasons I love the so-called third world. I love it because it's chaotic. But I also do want an orderly society. You know what I mean? So it's like, but I understand what you're saying where order, it's not always order is good and it's not always chaos is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, you know, like I said, I love chaos. I love going on. I love the messiness. Like I get really sometimes here, especially since I'm in Arizona, I'm in Phoenix, but I'm north in the mountains, so it's much more of a better aesthetic. But down in the city of Phoenix, the order there, it can literally physically make me ill sometimes. It's very weird. I go through certain neighborhoods and like these pre-planned housing communities where every house is brown, they're built the same way. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I literally get it like physically my stomach starts to hurt when I'm in these places. I don't know, it does something dark to me. I need something to, I want to cut myself. Make sure I'm still bleeding. You know what I mean? I want to be alive. It just feels dead.
Yeah, there's something that seems inhuman about that, right? Too much of that pre-planned, everybody look the same.
Yeah, and then you look, you know, when you go to like, you know, I'm not trying to, like any kind of these like places, you know, Mexico City or something, these neighborhoods are naturally occurring. And there's places like that, a lot of places like that in the States too. Any place where the neighborhood is alive and bustling and breathing and naturally occurring and feels like anything could happen at any minute, you know. Oh, it's just...
the order you're talking about, I think, is more of emergent order rather than imposed order. So imposed order is the problem. The phrase I use in the book over and over again is imposed hierarchical social order. It's the imposed that's the big problem. I don't know how much...
Or imposed chaos, too.
Imposed chaos is really someone else imposing their version of order on you, knowing that you won't be able to handle it.
Well, I get into this all the time about libertarians, and they can't understand the difference between immigration and mass migration, which is a financed and planned attack on the local populations. They can't understand the difference between immigration, people immigrating somewhere to make their lives better, and mass migration, which is dumping people into an area to create chaos and division, to then impose an order that will be begged for because there's a low,
right.
Do we create these low trust societies? So, I
wrote an article along those same lines called "Do You Favor Open Borders?" and it's about that same thing that, this, if people are, migration is a natural human right, but that doesn't mean that everybody is going to just pack up and move somewhere else. It's difficult. It takes a lot of effort. There's risk involved. Subsidized migration is not the free movement of people.
No.
Subsidized immigration is not what you're talking about, which would be an emergent order.
No, it's an organized attack on the law, and at various levels of this thing. Some people are just trying to make money, but they've written about this for hundreds of years. I mean, anybody can go read the Kalergi plan and see what's going on in Europe and kind of extrapolate what's going on here. Okay, let's go to number 3.
Sure.
Is there anything else you want to say about that? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I thought we covered it. If you have any follow-ups, pile on. I love it.
I think, okay, well, this is 3. It says, will you show honest, virtuous courage, knowing that courage is far removed from might makes right posturing or merely overcoming fear? Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Want to expound on that?
Sure. The chapter on courage, the word courage, the root of it, the C-O-U-R, comes from the Old Latin C-O-R, meaning heart. So someone who's courageous is someone who has integrity. Someone who's courageous is not merely overcoming fear, because you can overcome fear and do something stupid and violent and evil. That's not really courage.
Well, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Because not to cut you off, but that was the most valuable during the 2020 horse shit. The integrity was so. I realized how rare it was, basically, and what a valuable asset it is for somebody to have. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. Perfectly, and so some of the questions I have at the beginning of chapter 3 are. Have you ever known a person who, despite great hardships, sought to help others? Have you ever known a person who kept a realistic perspective, no matter the emotional pressures of a situation? Have you ever known a person who overcame obstacles by being more honest rather than more manipulative toward others? Jesus carrying his cross is that courageous person. When I teach... So I do teach some people at my church who are adults who are curious about the Catholic Church and who are thinking about whether they want to join the Catholic Church. And when we get to the lesson on courage, which is sometimes called fortitude, strength, I use props for a lot of these different concepts. And so I tell them, so the fortitude we're talking about is not strength like a hammer that just smashes stuff. And then I bring out a really thick rubber band. I say the strength we're talking about that's really courage is like a rubber band. And I flex the rubber band a little, and then I push it and prod it and make it move around and distort. And I say, the courage we're talking about is as you face the pressures of the world, can you exert the necessary force to know what you are and to know who you are and return to that? So it's not strength like a hammer. It's strength like a rubber band. It's about having an integrity that can withstand and that can project that centered courage and strength, that centered kind of strength to others.
Love it. Love it. All right. I got nothing on that. Number 4. That's a good. You got anything else you want to say about it? It's great.
No, go ahead.
I love it. I mean, like I said, I've said this many times. Integrity was. I was like, wow, it's very rare. It's a really rare commodity. It's an Archimedes lever for your life if you have it.
And it's the kind of thing that you should practice
cheat code.
Before the difficult situation comes up. Like, the old advice is buy a toilet plunger before you need a toilet plunger.
Right.
Right? Develop your integrity before it's really seriously, severely challenged. Lift weights before you suddenly have to move a very heavy object.
Yeah. Because otherwise you might end up...
Work on your courage, work on your integrity before you get put in the ridiculous COVID hoax situation where you just haven't built up those muscles. And now you're too weak to withstand what's coming at you. So maybe I did have more to say on it. There you go.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the old cliche, how do you act when nobody's looking?
Yeah.
All right. This is number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Will you face hatred, even organized, orderly hatred, without willing more hatred in return? This is a challenging one.
Yeah, this is about escalating versus de-escalating.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to, and this is why government is here and why many people often talk about, well, government just exists to divide us. Yes, exactly. Because the way government keeps growing and growing in size and scope is by getting you to find someone who's being attacked. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone you like, maybe it's someone you sympathize with. And then in return, instead of just wanting to alleviate that and say, hey, back off, it's, we should attack the other people who thought this would be a good idea. So now you're escalating a bad situation. You're seeking some sort of organized revenge rather than simply alleviating the bad thing. And that becomes escalate, and then all the other people can say, oh, well, you just did something else, so let's escalate that. And then let's escalate that. And pretty soon you've got everybody can claim some sort of victimhood and then claims that, well, what real justice would be is piling on, revenge. So I ask in that question, when you see something evil happening, is your goal to stop the evil, or is it to then impose upon the people you think are responsible in ways that then make you the enforcer? Like the problem, and this is why I'm an anarchist, because I'm not seeking revenge. I'm not seeking my guys to be in charge. I don't think there's better people that you could vote in or appoint in who could do good with a social apparatus that is at its core evil. I tell people frequently, coercive civil authority is inherently, intrinsically evil. It's what it is. It's not evil because the wrong people are in there. It's not evil because the wrong person won the election or got appointed or seized power. It's evil because of what it is. And so I'm asking people to confront the evil that they see in the world without wanting to make more of it. I'm asking people to confront the things that they see as chaotic without imposing order and therefore imposing chaos, your brand of chaos, on someone else. It's a mindset shift. If you're always seeking revenge, then that's where the government comes in, because government goes after those people on your behalf. Tax those people. They made too much money. Tax those people. They bought that product on the other side of that imaginary line. Steal from those people. Restrict those people. Close those people's businesses. Don't you know there's a new invisible fake pathogen floating around the air? Tell those people they can't leave their homes. I mean, the COVID hoax was everybody seeing what they thought was evil and then supporting even more evil in response. Oh, we're having a tough flu season. People get sick. Yeah, it happens. Lockdown. Force those people to close their businesses. Send the armed agents of the state after them if they refuse. People seeing a tough situation and wanting to have more evil.
They didn't think it was evil. They were propagandized into believing it was evil. Yeah, they didn't think for themselves. That's the problem. They didn't think. That was
you never think your evil is evil.
Right.
See, that's the thing where I go back to order and chaos. Order, if you want to get a little mythological, if you'll permit me.
Sure.
There's an old Babylonian god, and I use this as shorthand sometimes. The god Marduk. The god Marduk, the old Mesopotamian god from the Babylonians, way before Christianity, That was the God of imposed order. That was the God that went out and fought the chaos forces and defeated the chaos forces violently and then imposed an order on those chaos forces. So what I like to say to people is the devil, evil, never shows up looking like evil because people recoil from that. Evil always shows up as imposed order and control. So Satan's not going to tempt you. Satan is going to send Marduk to tempt you. Satan is going to send the opportunity for imposed order and control. And you're going to latch on to that because, well, order's a good thing, isn't it? And you're going to commit all sorts of evil that you're going to justify. It's always like that. Look at what the government of Israel is doing to the people living in the Gaza Strip. They never say what they're doing is evil. They always say they're trying to restore order, regain control of the situation. Mm-hmm. That's always the excuse. We're not doing evil. We're restoring order. We're gaining control. No, you're doing evil. You're violating people's natural human rights. You're imposing what you want on other people. Other people who aren't doing any or aren't committing any sort of wrong. They are not committing any sort of violence against you.
Speaking of evil in the world, so this is something I struggle with because I look at these people like the Lindsey Grahams of the world and these really disgusting, degenerate human beings, and it's very difficult for me not to hate them. So, but I don't like to hate them because I don't want to feel that anger inside of me. It degrades me.
Yes.
And I know at the end of the day, God is writing this story, so I have to not worry about it, in a sense. But the other thing is, the other half of that is, though, I do feel like these are, when you look at some of this Epstein stuff, and it goes way deeper than Epstein. I mean, the demonic nature of it, I do believe it's demonic. And so I think I came into this world with a sword, whatever that sword's going to look like. If it actually looked like a sword or a 9mm pistol or something, of course would never advocate for violence. But I'm just saying, if something were to happen to these people, I would have no problem with it. So I'm saying if it's a demonic entity, let's just break it down in my house. If somebody broke into my house to, hurt me or take my stuff, I have no problem taking them out.
In the moment, you're confronting an immediate deadly threat.
But what about in general for demonic, do you think I'm trying to think about how I can word this without just getting thrown off of YouTube do you think it is it evil or bad to hate in a sense, well, not hate necessarily, but maybe take hateful actions against some of these evil demonic entities that run these regimes around the world, just as a metaphor, or not a metaphorical, but like sort of a gameplay, theoretical thought exercise?
If you're going through hypotheticals, that can be a very good exercise. Okay. Just to kind of see where you are and where your own morals are. Describe some scenarios to yourself and see where you'd go. I think I don't think hate is productive. I think I suggest and encourage undermining rather than overthrowing.
But what if you're presented with that situation, though?
Pardon?
What if you're presented with that? Let's just say there's a fictional film, and in that fictional film there's a governmental entity. And the governmental entity has turned out to be run by a bunch of pedophiles and murderers. And this character named Joe, just an innocent guy, falls into his lap, this situation where he's going to be forced to execute all these people. They've been convicted of crimes against humanity, and they're going to be taken out, executed one by one. Okay? They're evil as can be. They've molested children. They've killed children. They've done even worse. Killed people around the world. Is Joe committing a sin, or is Joe taking on his burden. That's a weird story. I don't know if that works, but do you get my point?
I get your point. Does killing those people solve the problem, or does it just make you feel better in the moment?
But didn't God put Joe in that position in the first place where he's supposed to do what he's supposed to do?
I don't know. One of the things I go over in the book is I don't think God is in control, because control is a human desire based on human weakness. And I don't project that onto God.
Okay.
God is all-knowing and all-powerful, but God is not a control freak. I don't believe in a puppet master God. So I wouldn't say that a good God would put you in a position where you would get to justify premeditated evil.
Is it okay to take out human demons, we'll call them?
Human demons. Well, like an exorcism?
No, I just mean, I literally think that these people are demonic. At least there's a lot of these people around the world, these so-called governments are literally demonic. Whether they know it or not, I mean, I don't know what they're involved in. A lot of them are involved in, obviously, the dark arts and dark occult. And
they're inescapably evil. These structures are inescapably evil, and the people drawn to them are drawn to the things that are evil, but of course they define it not as such raw evil. They define it as, well, it's keeping order, or they define it as, well, this is our privilege because we're the ones who can handle it. That's elitism, which has been around almost as longer than the modern nation state.
They're also perpetual liars.
Yeah, they're manipulators.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
if they tell you something that could be accurate factually, they're still using it to manipulate you. The very first myth in the Bible that includes human characters is exactly that. It's the story of the Adam and Eve characters in the Garden of Eden. And the serpent, the tempter, comes up to them and says, why don't you go eat the fruit there from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? And, the human character, it's at first Eve, not Adam. Eve says, well, we've been told not to. And then the serpent says, oh, well, God has told you not to, because if you eat that fruit, you will become like God. And that's true as an isolated principle, as an isolated concept. The problem is the serpent leaves out the most important part. So, of course, learning about good and evil and developing the knowledge of good and evil makes you more like God. The problem is you don't get that by just taking someone else's fruit. You get that by learning how to cultivate the tree that eventually grows the fruit. And that's what the tempter leaves out. So the very first myth involving humans that's listed in the Bible is about the most evil of evil, telling people something that's technically true, but leaving out the most important parts and using it to manipulate them. So yes, if you're only looking for obvious lies in the world, you're going to miss a great deal of manipulation. If you're only looking for the most obvious gratuitous violence in the world, you're going to miss a lot of subtle violence and more understated evil that can be just as impactful.
Oh boy, you're talking about Israel, because I hear this a lot with these.
Could be.
Well, no, you hear a lot with these Zionists where they'll say, well, Islam, they came and they raped that girl, and that is horrible, right? But what they don't tell you is the massive societal manipulation these people have been doing to subvert society for 80 years, and all of the psychological operations that they're doing to destroy society for their own benefit. They don't tell you that. And the millions and millions and millions and millions of people that have suffered because of it. So that's an interesting point. There was something else that you said that I wanted to comment on. I forgot what it was.
I should talk in shorter spurts.
No, that's okay. So what was that? What you were saying? Evil? What was it? Anyways, it'll come back. We'll do a next interview. I'll remember what I So here's number 5. You ready? Do you have anything else you want to say about that?
No.
Okay.
Nope. Unless if you have more questions or follow-up questions after I give an answer, then I'm always ready for that. But
okay. All right. Will you love people in their imperfections the way God loves you in yours? That's a pretty obvious one, but let's elaborate on that, please.
It may be more obvious the way I put it, but it's not always obvious when you do it in the real world, and I think that's why the question has to be asked. Admiration is when you're happy about somebody's good qualities. You admire what they're doing, you celebrate what they're doing. But mercy is the kind of love that only comes into play when you recognize someone's flaws and imperfections, but you still treat them seeking the good for them rather than seeking to manipulate them or just use them. So mercy is to love people in their imperfections. If you've gone through the exercise of accepting that you're a limited person and so is everybody else, that's kind of like the clinching question. Like, after all of the opportunities for hatred and for piling on the suffering in the world and for making more victims in the name of order and control, of course, because you would never just be you're not a monster. You don't want to just commit evil. You're doing these things to create order and control. After all of the fake courage that's not real integrity. After all of that, after you realize that, yeah, people have flaws and they're imperfect, and even if they're not committing evil, they're still not, there's still something incomplete about them. There's still something that they have to struggle with. If you can see that about yourself and about others, and still will the good for that other person, if you could see that about yourself and not fall into self-loathing and self-hatred and still will the good for yourself, that's a big question. Because it's one thing to dive into these things deeply, these questions deeply, this information deeply and sharply, and to understand it and to comprehend it. It's another it's another thing to accept the reality, not make it worse, make it better in whatever ways you can that are presented to you.
Well, for all 5 of these, I think this is important. You tell me what your thoughts are. These are all aspirations, obviously. That we try to.
They start as aspirations, but the idea is that you can put them into practice.
Put them into practice, but you're gonna. My point is, you're not gonna be perfect. You're gonna fail, and the worst thing you can do is to fall into. And we're gonna do it anyway because I know I do. Maybe we won't. I don't know. I guess it's individual, but most people I know have this issue where you'll fall into a state of maybe a little bit of self-loathing, little self-hatred, and it's not a good place to be because when you're in that state, you're not in the best position and the best state of mind to serve your fellow man and to serve God. When you're sitting around despising yourself, you're basically taking yourself out of the game in a sense.
It hurts you, and it ruins your opportunities to engage positively with other people. Mm-hmm. Whether it's family members, people in your neighborhood, people in your workplace, people you just meet out and about in the world. Yeah, it compounds.
It's missed opportunities. I've had many of them where I'm just like in a state and somebody will say something or do something, and I could have presented an interesting, life opportunity or experience, whatever that would have been. And I didn't do it because I was in the wrong state of mind. You know what I mean? I just kind of ignored it. I'm like, oh man, I should have said something to her, or done this or done that, all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Do you have anything else you want to say about these 5 things? Because I want to ask you one more quick. I know we're getting on time here, but I want to ask you another question before we get out of here.
Sure.
But do you have anything else you want to say about these chapters or anything, or which we just discussed? They're really cool. I really like them.
No, if you're interested in it, again, it's an easy book to read. It's available on demand. and I continue the conversation at my Substack, writing about things every Wednesday.
Great Substack. Yeah, I restacked your last
I-
article. That was about that was a good Substack. It was about that one was what was it called again? What was the title of it?
Should Christians do what the Bible says? And the
This was really
subtitle
interesting because go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm just going to give the subtitle. Maybe not. The difference between descriptive and prescriptive.
What was really pertinent because what you find with so many of this, the sort of the anti-human types, you can label them communist, leftist, whatever you want to call it. It's the human organism. It's like a cancer in the human organism. It cancers the brain. It's this anti-human abundance sort of mindset. They'll always try to use the Bible against you, even though they don't believe in the Bible.
That's the modern government of Israel, isn't it? It's a bunch of people who don't actually believe in God.
Right.
I mean, so many of them are extremely secular atheists. They don't actually believe in God, but they swear that this God they don't believe in said that they are granted this parcel of land and can do whatever they want.
What's even crazier, well, I would say even they don't believe in God. They might be. I think there are a lot of them in the dark arts. Personally, I think they believe in the dark side.
Something, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that it's funny because I'm about to I posted it on the audio, but I'm about to post the video. Actually, the video is posted. What am I talking about? I went to this Jewish heritage festival and interviewed just a bunch of regular. They were actually from that Lubavitch, Shabbat Lubavitch, and they had some really interesting answers. I said people should watch that interview, and I didn't screw around with the edit. I didn't try to trick question them or anything like that. I just let them speak and let them say what they believed. And there were some really interesting answers there, and you might see a lot of contradictions there. But also you're going to see that they're also victims of programming too. These are just people from, regular folks, as far as I could tell. And that, just being in the space with them, really, a few of them really seem like really, really sweet, decent people. But the things that they've got bouncing between their ears, were pretty insane. And
go talk to a bunch of hardcore Christian nationalists. You'll hear the same kind of contradictions and the same cherry picking of scripture. In the Jones Plantation, I do know this about your movie there. There was a sense of virtue and maybe even Christianity being used to keep the slaves as slaves, right? It was a sense of, this is good for you.
Well, yeah, that for sure. There really wasn't a big touch on Christianity except the slave smith, Mr. Smith. Mm-hmm. He's involved. There's a little hint that he's involved in the dark arts.
He's involved in the dark arts. Well, people have taken scripture out of context to support all sorts of terrible things over the years. So I wouldn't be surprised that you're finding people who have kind of who have been given surface level understandings of a lot of these things that have a deep history and culture and context, and they're based on this surface level understanding. They know to repeat that phrase back to you. They know to repeat their favorite quote from Scripture.
Well, they said stuff. They repeated Israeli Mossad talking points to me, like Israel is the most moral army in the world, and we're just this tiny little country. They want to be left alone and live in peace, and all the talking points. But what reminded me was that they're all Ashkenazi, and this is the part. And I didn't really get a good answer for this. I said, well, if you're Ashkenazi, you're from Khazaria, your ancestors. Yeah, okay, yeah. And they converted to Judaism in the 800s. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. But you're given the land of Israel, of the original tribes. Oh, yeah. And I was like, and then one guy said, well, if you convert tomorrow, you get land in Israel too. And I was like, really? So how do you square that circle? I don't understand that. It makes no sense, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. It's what I call it's rationalization, which I call doing logic in reverse. You start with your conclusion, and then you cherry pick the quote unquote evidence that preceded it, that then retrace your steps leads you to your conclusion that you started with.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
there you go.
logic in reverse. Instead of moving from information and building connections and arriving at a conclusion, you start with your conclusion and then you cherry pick what had been the steps.
Yeah, there you go. That's that. You know what? I'm sometimes I have to be careful that I'm not guilty of that, because you know what I mean. I'll say, yeah. Okay, so here's my question. So I kind of brought this up in the beginning of the interview. And this is the last thing I want to kind of go over, is that a couple times in the course of my life, I tried to read the Bible. I was raised Catholic, but they did not do a good job. I'm a Catholic.
Okay.
I learned nothing of the Bible when I was in Catholic school. I was in Catholic school for a couple of years. A nun smashed some books off my sister's head. They took us out of school, and then I went to public school. But I was in the Catholic Church, and I never learned anything. But I've tried a couple times in my life to read the Bible, and I always started on like page 1. And I was like, I couldn't get past page 2. It was like, the so-and-so bequest, so-and-so bequest, so-and-so. I'm like, I can't read this. So then last time I got this ESV Bible, which is like, it's like the original Bible, right? It's not the King James Version, which was so. And I just picked up and I went to the New Testament. And I started reading Paul's letter to Corinthians 1. That's where I'm at right now. Read it very slowly.
Okay.
And I can actually read it and pick up on it. And there's actually one passage in there. I'm not going to go into this now, but it really blew my mind. But as a highly credentialed biblical expert, as we've established, what do you suggest for people? Because there's many such cases of, kids, Gen Z is going back to the church. I know my daughter's Gen A. People don't realize that is a really base generation coming up, at least a good percentage of them. What do you suggest to people that are just going back to the Bible? Do you have any suggestions, any plans of actions, any thoughts about what people should do that want to go back, even if they don't believe in God, even if they don't believe in religion at this point, but they want to read the Bible? What do you suggest?
I suggest, as a Christian and from a Christian standpoint, that start with the New Testament, start with the Gospels.
Okay.
Also, get yourself a good study Bible, meaning a Bible that will have contextual notes in it, and which will also have cross-references so you can see where parts of the Bible refer to other parts of the Bible. So you can see some of the connection. Whether you've already made the decision that you want to explore Christianity as a believing Christian, or if you're simply reading it as anthropology, as history, I would encourage that you realize that this is something that's almost 2,000 years before your time. Even the New Testament, it's almost 2,000 years before you. So read with an eye towards understanding history, culture, and context, because these books were not written to you. They can be of value to you if you approach them the right way, but you're not the audience. You brought up that you started with the letter to the Corinthians. That wasn't written to you. It was written to some people in a town called Corinth. Right? You're reading someone else's mail, Drew.
Yeah.
You're literally reading someone else's mail. So now, can you get value out of that? You can. But you'd have to start by grappling a little bit with the reality of the situation on the ground. What's the history like there? What's the culture? What's the context that you need to know to get into it? So I would always encourage. I don't know what your tenor is with modern Catholicism, but there are very good Catholic study Bibles out there that will give you context, notes, and cross references. So as you're reading, you're not just getting the English translation of the scriptures and being left, to do whatever with it. Like they're going to try and give you some context notes here and there so you understand some of the references that go on. Some of the cultural idioms that even when they're translated into English, you're still wondering, well, what does that mean? And of course, cross references so you can see like, oh, this thing is mentioned in another gospel as well, or in all 4 of them. This is referenced again in one of the New Testament letters. Or what happens many times, oh, wow, this goes back to a psalm. This goes back to one of the wisdom books in the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament as Christians call it. This goes back to Genesis, to the first 5 books of the Bible. Exodus, Deuteronomy. This goes way back there. It connects from there. So it's good. It's the Bible is not a novel where, and I can understand you having trouble this when you open it and start on page 1. It's not a novel in that sense, where you'd start on page 1 and just finish at the last page. The Bible is a collection of dozens and dozens of books written over the course of many centuries by several different human writers who did not always know each other. They weren't always contemporaries to each other. So you have to understand, especially in the Old Testament, okay, some of these books are trying to give historical accounts. Some of them are songs and poems. Some of them are novellas. Some of them are written to be very figurative. Some of them have a mix. You can see a lot of pagan influences in them, as the ancient Israelite people, the ancient Hebrews, are trying to grapple with everybody around them being pagan and them discerning something else. And so you can see that grappling happen. And even in the New Testament, you see based on what audience the scripture is written to, they may phrase things a little differently. The Gospel of Matthew is written to a primarily Israelite Hebrew audience. So there's all sorts of references as to how Jesus somehow fulfills, updates, completes a lot of the things that the ancient Hebrews would have known about. They would have learned about it their whole lives. The Gospel of Luke, on the other hand, is written primarily to a Gentile audience. It doesn't contain a lot of those same types of arguments or highlighting and featuring the same types of events that would have happened in Jesus's 33-year lifespan on earth, and even his 3-year span of public ministry. The letters that you're getting into, a lot of times they deal with specific things that are happening in those communities. The letter to the Galatians deals with stuff that's happening in Galatia. The letter to the Ephesians deals with stuff that's happening in the community in Ephesus. Corinthians, the people in Corinth. The letter to the Romans deals with what's happening over in Rome, sort of in the belly of the beast.
Do you have a suggestion for a study Bible that people might want to look at?
Any good Catholic study Bible that's translated and translated in a modern English? I know people love the beauty of the King James Bible because that was the first Bible translated into English. And some of the language, it's like Shakespearean. People really love to just read it as prose.
Okay.
But I think any modern, I would suggest any good Catholic study Bible. If you go on the usccb.org website, that's the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, there's an online Bible there that's set up just as I was describing. It's the text of Scripture, but then there's also and little hyperlinks there on the page for footnotes, for contextual notes, and footnotes for cross-references. It's the kind of thing where you can really get into understanding a lot of the events that are being described as connecting to other events and and I think it gives it a realness where you realize these aren't just fables that somebody made up. These are real people who lived in a real place in the world during a real time, and they dealt with real problems, including real governments that were, just awful.
Yeah, well, it's because in Corinth, there's you talk about that, specifically at one point he's talking about haircuts and covering your head, and then you look into it and you find out that female hookers shave their heads, so you don't want to shave your head if you're a woman, and men with long hair were male hookers, so you don't want to have long hair, and there's why is he talking about this? And then you look at the context of it, and it makes more sense.
Yeah, he's
all right,
talking
man. Well,
to them about their facts on the ground, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think you said something about that. It's a very human religion. You said something. What you were talking about that in your post. You had that little 1-minute clip of it, and it was about how it's a very human action. I don't want to misquote you, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I did it. In a recent article, I did that. In Should Christians Do What the Bible Said? I excerpted myself from my own Sunday Buffet podcast. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So people can get that. Yeah, they can also get some interesting things on what I think about Judeo-Christian and sort of that merging of terms there.
Yeah, that's a psyop, isn't it?
Unfortunately, it turned into it. I mean, I've used Judeo-Christian over the years because I think in a very real, earthly, human sense, the Christianity that the early church receives from Jesus does connect to what came before it. It's not a wiping clean of the slate. It tries to preserve the good things that people learned leading up to that, correcting the mistakes, but not throwing out the good things that people learned.
Yeah, but now it's this Ashkenazi Schofield Bible Judeo-Christian horseshit, right? I mean, they've co-opted it and ruined it, and it's just to program people into believing they should support the government of Israel, correct?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I tell people I don't support the government of Israel. I don't support the government of the United States. I don't support any government. I don't cheer for any of this stuff. I don't advocate for any of it. So
that's what when they say Israel has a right to have a state. No, they don't. Nobody has a right to have a state, in my opinion.
Yeah, no one has a right.
Right.
Yeah, the U.S. has a long history with things like states' rights, and every time I read that phrase, I go, "What are you talking about? States don't have rights."
People have rights, but
individual human a right is a valid claim, and those exist at the level of the individual. Individual human. I wrote a big thing about natural human rights because I get into that. What does the phrase mean? And it's natural meaning pre-political, human meaning it's something that any human can claim simply by virtue of being human, and rights are valid claims. So, I mean, you can claim your life, you can claim your intentional actions, which we call liberty, and you can claim the fruits of those actions, the things that you've cultivated, the things that you've fairly traded with others for, that we call property, the things that you use, because, we're physical and we live in a physical world, and we have to mitigate that. So, yes, I write about natural rights, I write about how these things connect, so it's... the book is Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen, and it's very much going through the persecution of Jesus, but I kind of take my own advice in the sense that I try to learn lessons from that and continue the conversation. And so far I've been doing it for a little over 2 years, weekly on Substack, first with just writing, and then with writing, and then adding in some weekly podcasting. And I do a little Bible study at the end of every Sunday Buffet podcast. So the last 5, 6, 7 minutes of the 30-minute program is me heading through the gospel of that Sunday.
One more time, where can people find your work? And then what time is your Sunday Buffet podcast?
The Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen Substack. Search for Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen on Substack. If you search for it on any of the on-demand publishing platforms, you should bring up me as well. Look for my name as the author as well, Domenic Scarcella. For the book, I do put my middle initial in there, so you'll see Domenic C. Scarcella. That's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and LuLu. If you like the independent producer, you don't like the big corporations, okay, you can. It's available at LuLu. It's the same price for the physical book at every one. Okay. And, of course... Substack, Good Neighbor, Bad Citizen. The Sunday Buffet is published every Sunday at, I schedule it to be released at 6 a.m. Sunday morning, Eastern time zone in the U.S. So it's Greenwich Mean Time -5. So it's 11 a.m. over in Greenwich, England.
Okay.
But it's the Sunday Buffet. The Wednesday article comes out same time, 6 a.m. Eastern. It's scheduled to publish every Wednesday. I do a meditation series on Fridays that I call FM Radio Friday Meditation. And again, I don't know why I chose 6 a.m., but, it's the kind of thing where, I'm done with it the night before, and I'm like, okay, we'll schedule this, and people can then have at it whenever they want. That's the beauty of remote communication, right, is people can listen to these things at their leisure. Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad call, because then when they get up in the morning, it's ready to go,
Yeah, right.
I know Sam Tripoli does that. I think he releases some of his podcasts like midnight, 12:01. So like when they get up in the morning to drive to work, they can sit and listen to it. So
yeah, there you go.
All right, brother. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. It was great talking with you, and I'm looking forward to hopefully someday meeting you in person.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for the invitation. I've become more familiar with your work over the past year or so and months, especially when I realized your connection to the Jones Plantation and to Larkin Rose. So thank you very much for the invitation to not only speak with you, but to speak with your listeners and viewers.
Right on, brother. Thank you. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can follow me on Twitter if you want at Tregsman with 2 G's and an S, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Drew Media TV. We also have a Rumble channel, Drew Media, if you prefer there. I know a lot of people don't like YouTube. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, like on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, if it's not too much of a pain and you like the show, give it 5 stars so we can get some help from the algorithm. Otherwise, all the other links to our social media will be in the show notes, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.